We had so much fun speculating, but we are here to talk about season one, what we've seen so far, how we feel about it so far. So I'm going to go around to everybody. Just first impressions, just like a good minute impression of, episodes 1 through 16. I'll start with Ben.
My overall view on the show is it was hit and miss. It was literally just like going through a mount or a valley of mountains up and down throughout the whole season because there were so many highs and lows, and it just I don't know. Overall, like I honestly would have to say the show was disappointing for what it turned out to be.
All right. I'm going to throw it over to Steven.
So I enjoyed much of the show. Like I think Omega has been my favorite character out of the whole squad. I think that there's been some great dialogue between her and the other squad members. I feel that they need to still develop Tech and Echo a lot more. So there are maybe a few episodes that didn't really do much for me, and the last two were part of that as well. So, like, I enjoyed much of the show, but when it wraps up and I look back on it as a whole, I think it didn't get as much done as I expected it might. Like, I don't know if the Omega mystery has wrapped up or not. It's really vague, and I don't really know what the direction of the show is for season 2. Like, I thought maybe the finale would give us a better idea, but it feels like it went 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They're kind of back where they began with the whole Crosshair thing. So it was one of those endings where it didn't really hype me up for season 2, like other Star Wars show season finales have with like the ends of their seasons. So this felt very out of the norm for me, the way this left me feeling kind of cold. Like there's some good stuff. I just wish I felt more hyped for what's coming up. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts on season 1.
Great. Yeah, both of you voiced your opinions pretty well because they are pretty much in line with my initial impressions going into this discussion like we started off with a bang, like this is the Bad Batch. This is a series I kind of always wanted, right? Getting that transition from the Grand Galactic Republic to the Empire, and how does that look like? How do the clones transition into the Stormtroopers? What is the phasing out of the clones and bringing in of actual recruits into the Empire? What's Order 66 looking like, when they're looking back on it? Just a lot of cool things. And while we did get a lot of those cool answers to those questions, we ended up, I think, Steven, you said it pretty well there. It's like we ended up at the end of the season kind of in a circle almost. Like when you look at it in a vacuum, like we had some good momentum going forward, but then we kind of end up at the same place where it's like Crosshair, he's still out on his own. And you have the Bad Batch. They're all still together. They're all alive. Nobody's hurt or nothing. Everybody's just kind of where they all started. So with that, I'm kind of lukewarm on this first season as well, which is a disappointment. As I said, I'll compare this to like Star Wars Resistance, Star Wars Clone Wars. Like we got lots of like really cool cliffhangers where it's like, I need season 2 right now. And I just didn't really feel like that. But let's start by talking about breaking down the characters. You mentioned one of them, Steven, Omega. Now, Omega started off as a character that was very mysterious. Now, we learned a lot about her, how she is the sister of Boba Fett. But I think they did leave some things that they didn't really answer or acknowledge after the first couple episodes. And one of them is like, I think we were on the verge, all of us thinking, hey, maybe she is force sensitive, like, or at least very telepathic, because she's kind of knows what Crosshair is going to do before that, and is quick to like use guns well and all that without any proper training. So what do you guys feel about the character of Omega in general? And I'll start with Ben on this one.
Well, as I've said throughout the whole season, basically since she first got introduced, she was my favorite character for the entire season as a whole. I thought she was great, except halfway through the season, like the first, I don't know, 7 or 8 episodes, her character arc was going up for me, I would say. And then we hit a lull where it was like, holy smokes, we're getting into like really repetitive storytelling, like Omega captured, Omega not learning her lesson, Omega not learning her lesson, Omega not learning her lesson. Like, but like, so we have that, but then in the same breath, like the one episode ends with her like beating all those guys in Sabak and stuff. Like, so she's really good at strategy, but then she's still not learning her lesson. So it's like, what is going on here? I mean, it ended up resolving itself, like, as you said, lukewarm. Like, you know, when the robot was out in the AZ was out in the water, like Omega was so quick to want to save him, and it's like you should have learned a lesson by now. So I don't know. Her character started getting really sloppy for me in the second half of the season, I would say. But overall, her character was still my favorite one of the show. And it's just going to be interesting to see how they handle her in season 2. Just because will her character keep progressing, or will her character be the what's the term in movies, like the thing that progresses the plot?
MacGuffin?
Like the MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin.
Yeah. Will she be the MacGuffin of the show, where like it'll be just her getting captured? Like, will it be along those storylines? Because I feel like we're gonna get something like, you know, Nalase is gonna interact with her at some point. So like, are we gonna get into repetitive storytelling where it's gonna be that, like, it's gonna be more repetitive stuff, or will her character actually grow? Like, that's a big thing. And for me, also, as you mentioned, we all were thinking potentially early on maybe she's force sensitive and things like that, but I was able to be fine with it after the fact, like knowing she wasn't, just because you know, her reflexes are so good, just because presumably, you know, she inherited that type of a trait from Jango. I mean, you know, Jango had killed Jedi before and stuff, and he's not force sensitive. He's just, you know, a quick draw, basically. I mean, you know, we see him kill that one Jedi in the Geonosis arena.
Oh yeah, Coleman Trevor. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you see how quick he is, and I mean, Jango doesn't even really flinch. So so obviously, like, Omega has natural talent, but like, were her skills actually refined enough to be using it? Like, I don't know. It's definitely interesting to see with her how, or like where her character is going to end up. But again, overall, where, just like the season, her character ended up being lukewarm, because I feel like we still got to the same point. But then again, I guess, to play devil's advocate to myself, are we you know, this is a question for both of you and for any of our listeners, are we judging Omega too harshly as an adult clone, like as an adult soldier? Because also, you know, we have to remember, she is a kid. Like, you know, a kid will, I mean, how old is she? 13, 14? So like, or 12, 13, whatever. Like she's still a kid. So like, a kid in that situation, like, you know, I was kind of iffy when Crosshair gave her AZ at the end, but, you know, of course a kid's going to be excited. Like, that's finding your dog, you know, after it going missing. Like, so are we judging her too harshly because she's a kid and we're looking at her as an adult? Like, are we projecting that she should be an adult when she's actually not an adult?
That's very fair. I do like that stance, because I think we do take ourselves out of it and just imagine her as just like any of the other Bad Batch, because especially we know that she's older than the Bad Batch. She's not, you know, she doesn't age fast like them, like twice the speed or whatever it may be. So it's easy for us to kind of make that assumption. But I think you are right. We have to give her time. We've gotten other Star Wars stories, but like the characters definitely ranged a little bit older. I mean, Ezra, I would assume he's like 15 or 16 at the beginning of Rebels. I would think she's probably only like
14. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say she's probably more like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
I would like in the first episode, I think Tech says that she's in adolescence, so she could be like at least 10, maybe preteen or 13 or something.
Yeah, so about Omega with you, Steven. How are you feeling about her progression, I guess, from episode 1 to episode 16?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with Ben on how her progression felt. Like there was a lot of momentum up until the episode where she's fighting off like Cad Bane, and Fennec Shan was there as well. And like that was a really great episode. And a couple people I know were saying that it was really weird how their favorite episodes of the Bad Batch are the ones that don't feature the Bad Batch that much. Like there's that episode and the Hera episode, like the part 1 of that. But yeah, I think that episode where it's just Omega fending for herself against those bounty hunters, like after that, I think they lost momentum with her arc, and then it was like, well, what exactly do they want to do with Omega? Like in the finale, or the part 1 of it at least, when she casually says that she's older than them, she saw them in the lab. It's like I still have questions about that. Like, how much older than them are you? And it feels like just an afterthought. Like it's just there. And I'm sure there are probably big plans for Omega and her evolution. I'm just not sure what to expect about how it'll be executed.
Mm-hmm. And let's shift over to the Bad Batch now. The Bad Batch as a whole, the namesake of this series. Now, after watching this first season, do you agree that it was a good idea to like make the Bad Batch the focal point of an adventure story through the dark times? Do you think like what we got for the first season was good enough to be like, okay, I can understand why they chose these characters to follow rather than any other characters that survived like Order 66?
I feel like they chose good characters for this, but didn't invest enough in about half of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I still feel like there's a lot we could have gotten from Echo. Like, I'm hoping that in season 2 we see kind of like his path diverging from the Batch. Like maybe an episode where he and Tech are like stranded alone together. They have to like get something accomplished, and then Echo is like, I'm gonna seize my opportunity to join Rex and whatever he's doing. Like I do love the clones' perspectives. I just feel like there could have been more for a couple of these characters, and even Crosshair felt all over the place to me. Like I'm not really sure what he wants most of the time. Like I feel like there's more they could do. Like they could expand even further with the clones' perspectives by, doing like a spiritual sequel to Republic Commando, and like having Delta Squad go up against the Bad Batch even, and like just like they could have like a debate or whatever and see what happens with all those characters.
Ben, I know you were chuckling at the Delta Squad because we were also talking about that a couple episodes.
Yep.
Do you agree with that sentiment from Steven?
Yeah, I think with the different characters, I think the reason why they started feeling the way they did is just because we were getting so many almost pointless episodes. Because in my opinion, it doesn't matter whether it's the Bad Batch or any show. As long as you tell a good story, you can make any character work. So, like with the Bad Batch, I think the criticisms that fall on the characters really lie on the creators of the show, because, you've had so many episodes where it was like, oh, another Sid mission, oh, another Sid mission, oh, another Sid mission. So it's like, what is going on here? Like I said before, I was half expecting Sid to show up in the finale. So like, you have stuff like that totally derails the characters. And then just to go by character basis, like Hunter, I think Hunter was done pretty well for the most part for like what his, he was kind of learning to be like an older brother figure. Like I think they did really well with him. Wrecker played his role as a good, kind of comedic relief, even though early on, we talked about how he was getting a little bit much in the first couple episodes. And then the problem I have with the Bad Batch is specifically Tech and Echo, because I think their characters are totally redundant. Like they're literally basically the same character. Like, they have the same skill set. Like, what made Delta Squad unique, for example, was like everybody had a different skill set and, it all contributed to the team. But Tech and Echo, that's why for the longest time I thought Echo was going to die because, he's an older character, nostalgia, etc. I thought he was going to be the one to get taken out eventually just because he's redundant with Tech. So, you have that situation, and, those two characters, I feel like Tech and Echo were really just like side, they were literally the 3PO and R2, they were afterthoughts.
Yes.
like that's what they were. They were afterthoughts. And then Crosshair, the big issue with him was he started out really cool, like, especially in the episode where he gunned down his own troop. Like, I was like, whoa, we're going to get a hardcore villain here. Like, I remember us saying on our episode reviewing it, Chris, we were like, man, they went there, like having him, shoot his own guy. Like, okay, this is actually going to get pretty gritty. And then we start going on Sid missions and things go sideways. So like, you have Crosshair start out so good, and then, we find out in like whatever it was, like episode 11 or 12, Crosshair just now is asking to be able to hunt the Bad Batch. It's like, wait, I feel like it was just assumed by everybody. Like, I mean, maybe wrongfully assuming, but I feel like everybody just kind of assumed, oh, he's on the bad guys now. Like, he's hunting the Bad Batch, like in the background. Like, I remember us like talking about that as a potential story threat early on in the first couple episodes. Like, hey, Crosshair is probably hunting these guys in the background. And then it's like episode 11 or whatever, 12 rolls around and he's like, can I hunt them? And then they're like, permission granted. And it's like, wait, what? Like, I thought he's been hunting them this entire season. So like, I feel like they kind of botched his character with not using him properly. And then by the end of it, we still get to the same place as you mentioned earlier, Steve. Like, we literally got to the same place we got in the beginning of the season. Like, the Bad Batch is still the Bad Batch. Crosshair is even without the chip, Crosshair's still stuck on the Empire. Like, so where did they go with Crosshair? Like, I feel like the only characters, in my opinion, that actually progressed were Omega slightly, and then Hunter, I feel like, did a pretty good job. But then again, I guess I'm just countering my own self by saying that, because right after Omega gets captured by Cad Bane and they rescue her, like I think it's the very next episode is where he leaves Omega with Sid and they go off planet for that mission with like the Senator or whatever. Like, so like, why, with Hunter being like the lead of the squad, like Omega is so valuable, and you're like, let's just leave her with this sketchy bar owner. Like, so I don't know. I feel like the characters were really lukewarm at best, like on their progression. Like, Omega was pretty good, Hunter was okay, but Wrecker was what he was. Tech and Echo were redundant, and Crosshair ended up the same place he was.
Now that you're mentioning all the things with Omega being left behind, it was like making immediate parallels to the Mandalorian, and that's the problems I have with season 2. It's like, why are you gonna leave Grogu out there when the speeder bike is out there on Tatooine? Like, somebody's gonna get Grogu. Or why would you leave Grogu with just like 2 frog people? Or why would you leave Grogu with like this maintenance person on Tatooine at a docking bay? And then I started thinking like, oh wow, it's like the same thing. But then also the fact, and Mandalorian actually accomplished this. So another thing, kind of going away from the character discussion for a second here, it's just like how formulaic the season was. Like, a lot of these episodes where they're like on a mission, then it goes back on the ship, and that's the end of the episode. Like, it starts becoming very formulaic, where it's like you can kind of understand like how the episode's going to start, how it's going to end, and it just kind of rinses and repeats. But yeah, I think you guys summed it up pretty well about my thoughts as well, about like, hey, like certain characters evolved. Wrecker, the guy that I really just didn't think I would like at all out of all the characters. Like, we thought he was pretty annoying in the first ones, but then we see the other side of him and like how he cares for Omega and treats her like, the younger sister, and he helps make this like cool like little room for her to feel at home and things like that. And seeing the chips get removed so early on in the series, I thought was going to make way room for like bigger things to tell with this squad. And ever since that middle episode on Braca where they got it removed, I feel like that's where the Bad Batch like started to slowly stop developing, because Hunter kind of aggravates me because he seems like people like, he just joined the rebellion already. Like, why are you like encountering all these people, these sympathizers like Rex and the sisters and whatnot, and yet he's finding out like bad things about these underworld, that it's not safe dealing with these kind of people, but he's still like set in his ways, like, no, I'm gonna still like do my thing, like no matter how many like bad moments and situations he gets stuck in. So he's got kind of a thick skull because he's been through all these events and he's like still not like reacting like a normal person would to these things.
Oh yeah, just to jump in there, like not to pile on Hunter anymore, but to pile on Hunter a little more. Okay, so we're going through all these different events and things, and I was just talking to my good friend about it literally just a few hours ago. Why did Hunter not get Omega armor? Like, you're going through all these bad events, all these things, and she's the only one. The rest of them are wearing all this protective gear, getting blasted and everything, and Omega's running around in street clothes. Like, what are you doing? Like,
not even street clothes. She's wearing like Camino and garb. Yeah. Like, anybody can point her out in the street and like, oh, she's worth a lot of money to us. Like,
yeah, she's from Camino. So like I thought that was such a weird thing. Like, you're going on all these dangerous missions and things, and like even when the episode where she's like using the bow and stuff, like that episode, like that's an episode like really involving combat, and you're having Omega wear her Camino gear. Like, what? Like, I don't know. I just thought that was a bad thing with like on Hunter, like being like the leader of the squad and like so protective over her. And then it's like, well, nah, she doesn't need armor. She's good. Like, I don't know.
Maybe her genetic enhancement or whatever is that she has thicker skin that's like armor. I don't know.
hey, there we go. I've always had the thought, and I don't know, I can't give credit to whoever it was, but I can't stop thinking about it. But like, what if, I saw it on Twitter, what if Omega eventually ends up getting the concept Boba Fett prototype all white armor? Like, I think that would be crazy cool.
Oh yeah, because we got a lot of Macquarie, or actually that's Joe Johnston artwork, I believe, but still, like, they love pulling that old stuff. I think that'd be pretty impactful, like to see that legacy character kind of come back like that.
The thing is with that though, the only caveat to that is if they would do that with Omega, I have a slight feeling like if they would ever want to introduce her in live action, they would want to introduce her as like the all-white Boba Fett, and introduce her that way, and basically Boba Fett be like, who the heck is this? And they would want to save it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, so we did get a new villain this time around. I mean, we had the cameo with Grand Moff Tarkin, or at least at this point, he's just known as what is it, like Command or Admiral Tarkin, something like that.
Admiral Tarkin.
So we have Vice Admiral Rampart. Now, I think this guy proved his mettle. This guy meant business. Yes, he was pretty one-dimensional, as one-dimensional gets with like a mustache-twirling villain. But seeing what he did to Camino towards the end, seeing the hit he was putting out on different characters like Orn Free Ta, and just like sniping them and using them as like leverage for the Empire. I thought this guy was cunning, conniving, and he's definitely one of the standout Imperial officers that I think we've got in recent memory. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He definitely has those villainous traits, but there were many times throughout the season where I honestly forgot he was even an entity because of like all the other stuff they were focusing on. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's literally how I feel. Like, I thought his character was pretty surprisingly. I mean, he was more well done than a lot of our main Bad Batch was. Like I think his character was done well for what it was. Like, he was a villain. When he was in the episodes, it was like impactful as he could be as a villain, I would say. And then, he wasn't just like a pushover. So I don't know. I thought he was pretty good. And, and it fits like the narrative of like, hey, this is like this new formed empire. So of course he's going to be like, try to be hardcore, like, because he wants to get his rank up and, work his way up in this new organization or new form of government, I guess. So like, I thought they did really well with him. And I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see where that leads.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to the big thing here: execution of story, execution of the various plots. So we really had like an A, B, and C plot for the most part. Obviously the big main plot is what's going on with Omega, like who is she, how's she interfacing with the squad. Then we also had the whole Kaminoan story with them getting phased out and seeing like what they're doing with Lama Su, Nala Se, and Tan Wei, like behind the scenes, like ooh, like we have to start doing stuff to like worry about our own resources that are going to dwindle if the Empire doesn't support us anymore, that sort of thing. And then, of course, you had Crosshair's perspective, being in the Empire, being in this reorganization, dealing with like actual humans and not like dealing with clones anymore. So we'll start with the main plot there, and we'll kind of talk about if it worked, if it flowed well in this first season. It's just the Bad Batch's journey. How do we feel about that from episode 1 to 16?
The Bad Batch's journey, if I feel like I've said it already, it feels like there was very slight progression, but it's like overall, like what are they doing? Like why did it take them so long to like get the chips out? Like why were they just messing around? Like Rex's reaction when he found out that they still have their chips, it was like my reaction as well. Like, why the heck do you still have these chips in there? What are you doing, you morons? But so I guess in season 1, it feels like their progression overall was very like baby steps, whereas I would want them to have progressed a bit further. Like, I don't know how, but it just feels like they could have done more. And I don't know if they're saving the good stuff for next season or future seasons, but that's pretty much how I feel about their journey overall. It's just kind of all over the place, and I don't know what their main direction is for the characters. Like if it's just supposed to be mainly focused on helping clones, or if it'll be other stuff as well. Like I just don't know what the intention is.
Yeah, and I think what could have solved this issue, because I also have an issue with like how long it took to get there to the end, maybe not have 16 episodes, maybe cut out some of the stuff, because especially if it wasn't going to factor into the season, then why include it right now? Yeah, sure, there could be an episode that's like a long, they're playing the long game with it, but I feel like there was too many episodes that were like the world building episodes that could have been like, especially that really stands out to be like a sore thumb is that one episode with the new criminal gangster that was introduced to Devarian.
Infested.
Yeah, that episode.
My nickname for that one is Uninvested, because that's how I felt while watching it both times.
So like they could have trimmed the fat, and that could have helped the storytelling quite a bit, I feel like. What about that, Ben? What did you think about the Bad Batch progression? Do you agree? With the way things went with some of these episodes, how do you feel about that?
I feel like as you both mentioned, like the progression of the story, I feel like it was all over the place, and it was like really baby. It was like 2 baby steps forward and 3 back. Like it just, we didn't really get anywhere. Like with the characters, we really didn't. Like, the only thing that, in my opinion, that really even happened to the squad, for the most part, like, as we said, Hunter gained a little bit more brotherly experience. Omega gained actual, like, on Kamino, she had her skills, but it's like when you go to school for something and you're not actually, like, working that job yet. Like, Omega had her skills, but she wasn't field tested. Now the only thing is, she's field tested now. So that's pretty much all that happened in this season. But overall, like, the story and overall progression, it's just like, where are we at? Like, where are we going? As we talked about in our prior episode, Chris, like it just the way the show went, it didn't get me excited for season 2, and I hate saying that because like I want to be so excited for everything, anything that Star Wars comes out. Like I always joke around, like as Star Wars fans, we'll be their opening night if it was called like the Jawa's Big Adventure, like like anything. Like we would be their opening night though. But like the Bad Batch, it killed my excitement for the next season. It really did, just because it's like, well, I mean, I'm still gonna watch it obviously every week, and hopefully it's great. Like obviously, the trailer could be really great for it, but but still, the way this story went for this season, it was all over the place, and it didn't get me hyped for what's to come, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I think out of all the storylines I mentioned, and you guys can bring up if there were any more like subplots that I might have missed, but I think the Camino story worked out the best because I feel like they at least like touched on that every couple episodes to keep the momentum of that story playing in the background, like the Kaminoans conniving against the Empire, like going behind our backs, like, oh, we need to get Omega for this reason, or we need to get a clone back for this reason. And then you have Lama Su, who's also sending out Cad Bane to also go out and get or kill the character and get him. So I liked how there was like even that kind of subterfuge going on, and then actually seeing how that would play into the transition of like the proto stormtroopers, the Ralph McQuarrie design, and seeing like the Republic commandos, and seeing Nal say at the end. So I think out of all the stories from start to finish, we've seen plenty of clones on Camino, and then we actually see the destruction of Camino, which is a great like metaphor or like whatever for like this is the end of an era. Like this is now the time of the Empire. We're gonna get into season 2, and I won't be surprised if we see like TIE fighters by the end of season 2 at that rate. So do you guys agree with that? As far as like with the Camino and story and all.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, you're good. You're good. No, I agree. Like I think this definitely was like symbolizing the end of the Clone Wars era, and it's just going to be transitioning into now more Imperials. Like I feel like all the clones / stormtroopers, I feel like we're going to get them in just their full-blown normal stormtrooper attire. Like well, all of that sort of it'll be definitely more of an Imperial vibe to the show. Like I think anyways. And it's just they did well on that storyline. Like the Camino thing, that probably was the best overall storyline of the show. And it's crazy to say that because that's like the C plot story. Like you want to expect that to be like the main thing, because you would expect the show to be about our main characters. But
yeah,
the Camino thing wrapping up was probably the best thing in my opinion.
And well, here's the thing, like I said before, going into the show, that's actually what I cared about the most. Like, say what you would about the Bad Batch, but like I'm not like super invested in them after the 4 episodes we've seen them in the Clone Wars. So that's why I was kind of like scratching my head when they announced the Bad Batch, like, oh, this is the way we're going. We're going to actually follow these characters. I mean, yeah, this is their chance to shine. It's their show. But I'm like, oh, they're putting that much stake into these characters that seemed pretty one-dimensional when we seen them the first time. But like the story that I was really invested in was like, what is happening with the clones? What's happening there on Camino? And to see like a galaxy-changing thing happen in this show is what helps it like redeem itself for season 1. Actually having the balls to like take out Camino in this show, like, whoa, that was actually very like risky for them, and it paid off. So that's that. I think we've spoken enough about Crosshair and about I liked where he ends up. I do like that he's not going to just join wherever the Bad Batch is going. Like, hey, maybe he'll go off, and I don't think the Empire is going to really take him back at this point since he killed his own men and all that. They just think of him as a number probably at this point. So maybe he'll be like a lone gunman, kind of like Mandalorian. I would like to see that, like him just kind of going around making a name for himself, maybe. So I think there's a lot of room for Crosshair because he did grow on me, especially in those last 2 episodes. Like, okay, we actually see like there's promise to this character, where before that I thought he was just a one-dimensional guy.
Yeah, I feel like they did a really great job with dealing with the Kaminoans and how they were feeling about everything and what was going on with the clones as they're being phased out. But I feel like in those last couple episodes, yes, we do get a little bit of a better understanding of Crosshair and the Batch's relationship with him. Like they've accepted that this is who he is and they're not going to try as hard to try to save him. But the whole destruction of Camino, or I guess Tipoca City, which I mean, I think you saw me like tweet about this or something, how like I was wondering if Tipoca City is named after tapioca, which is also used in boba milk tea. But anyway, like I feel like there would have been more emotional weight to the destruction of that city if there were still some clone troopers left behind. Like you don't have to have it full like it was before in the Clone Wars with like the tanks and whatever. Like you could just have like some clone troopers like ordered to like patrol the place in case a batch returns or whatever. But and like as it's being destroyed, like maybe one of the batch members is like, oh, we have to save them, they're our brothers, and the others are like, we can't, there's no time, it's impossible, or whatever. Like that might have added more emotional weight to the whole thing. Like I get it, they're trying to make it mainly like make Crosshair the main focus of what should be honed in on, but I just feel like despite like really good dialogue and those character interactions in that finale, they could have done much more with the Crosshair stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think we could all agree on some really good aspects of the Bad Batch unanimously. And first off, we got to talk about the animation, because I think it is hands down the best Star Wars animation we've seen. They took the same team from the Clone Wars for the most part. You got Joel Aaron, you got Keith Kellogg, you got, Dave Filoni. He's working more behind the scenes on this show, not in, the director's chair as much. But we see this team putting out this quality episode after episode. I feel like they're upping themselves along the way, starting with that initial first episode, the trees, the water, the vastly different environments. I got to give them a shout out for that. Like the fact that we went to so many planets that we have always heard about, like for instance, Ord Mantell, Pantora. We've never seen that planet before. We got the one planet where they find the Republic Commandos on. That was a lot of really unique biospheres that they've developed specifically for Bad Batch. So I really did enjoy just seeing just the epicness of Lucasfilm animation at work there.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the animation in the show was perfect in my opinion. Like it was so good. The way it was shot, I thought was done really well. The different effects, whether it be like the blasters, the vehicles, the way the character designs were. I feel like the best looking characters though were the Kaminoans. Like the Kaminoans were like sharp. They were spot on. Like I thought they were really great. And just as you said, also the environments. Like the environments were all done so well. I think the best, like my personal favorite, the water on Kamino was great, but my personal favorite, I thought that was shot so well and just visually was stunning, was the Fennec Shan episode.
Oh,
like
yeah.
in the city. Like I thought that was done so well. Like that was probably my favorite one visually. But overall, I can't complain about any of the episodes visually. Like they all looked great.
Yeah, the environments look really great for 3D animation. I wouldn't mind if they tweak the character designs a bit. Like, I still think it's really ridiculous that Omega is a Jango clone, but that was not on many people's minds before the start of the show. Like, people were speculating that she could be a Palpatine clone. So I feel like there are some steps that they need to take with the character designs, and maybe they're already doing that now for the next season. But overall, the worlds themselves looked really great. And like you look back at the beginning of the 3D Clone Wars and see how Well,
Hmm.
like back then, I didn't mind the animation for it, but you see like the evolution of it and how far it's come. Like back then, some people were just not into the idea of Star Wars going from live action to 3D animation. It was sacrilege or whatever. And now here we are, like praising the 3D animated Star Wars stuff and how great it looks.
Yeah, yeah, great stuff there. Yeah, and you know what? The Bad Batch, they do look a little pasty and whatnot. So I think it is worth, like, I know Lucasfilm did say they're gonna take a second look at character designs, and hopefully for season two they'll be able to kind of adapt some things, look more like Tamora Morrison rather than just what they look like now. But um, also, which complements the animation is the awesome music by Kevin Kiner Brothers.
Mm.
And especially, like, I mean, throughout the thing, I mean, the Bad Batch, the theme for the squad and stuff, I always loved that kind of like parade, kind of upbeat, marching kind of music with the drums. But then also having like a lot of really cool callbacks. Like, I really enjoyed the Attack of the Clones, like, little tie-in music there on that second class
Oh yeah,
episode.
Camino.
Yeah, then you got also the Imperial Death Star music at that
Yeah.
that one part. So there's like a lot of callback there, but then there's like new themes created for Omega. So they did a really good job of like creating original music, but like sowing the seeds for like music that we either have had before or are going to get eventually in the future. So they brought it like a lot more of an emotional weight, and that's what we need to have as music is enhanced the overall storytelling, which I think they did a great job with.
Yeah, there's like thinking back, I feel like I didn't analyze the music as I was watching the show that much. Like I'd have to go back and listen like really like more closely, but I do remember there's great music in the finale at least, and uh, also like the familiar stuff that you mentioned. So yeah, like the music is a huge part of Star Wars. So the more they can give that a presence and use that to give different characters and different environments a presence, like that's very much in the tradition of the franchise.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about you, Ben?
Yeah,
How's the music for you?
yeah. I thought the music was pretty good overall. Um, in terms of the newer music, though, I wasn't too sure because it really wasn't that memorable in my opinion.
All right.
But yeah, like that's where I can agree with you on that, Steven. And then like I feel like the most memorable music was the familiar things we heard, like the playing off nostalgia from Camino and the Death Star and all that sort of thing. But I did, as you mentioned, Chris, I really did like the opening like sequence, like the title music for the show, that little beat,
Mm-hmm.
just because it gave you like an army vibe, I guess.
Yep.
Like I don't know, it's something like you picture like in an army movie, like it literally was. So like I thought, like every week, that is one thing I can give hats off to the show of. Like the title music was always like, okay, here we go. Like this is like setting the tone. It's like an army-ish type show, whatever. Like I thought that was the most or the best piece of new music for the show specifically. And then, as I said, the other like familiar type of pieces of music I thought were done really well. Uh, Especially the Camino. The Camino one was great. Like I loved hearing Camino again. Like, and all sorts of fans I'm sure loved it just because, it all gave us all flashbacks back to Attack of the Clones, and you gotta love that stuff.
Yeah. So before we get into our final thoughts and our scores, and I do have Milton's final thoughts and scores I'm going to read off as well. Um, let's just take like a quick minute each or so and just talk about speculation, how we could make season two better in our eyes, what we think the characters could do, what we'd like to see, any possible cameos, things like that. So I'll just start off myself by saying I hope that we get some connection to maybe Bail Organa or like a rebel cell. I thought that would be maybe how they end off this season, like Hunter like realizing like, oh, I gotta fight for a greater cause. Caminos no more. The Empire means business. I have to rise up against them, and maybe Rex will introduce him to something. So I fully expect that the second season is going to be all about that. I feel like the second season is going to tie us in to characters like Hera. and Cham Syndulla. Now that they're off of Ryloth, I think that they're going to have something to do with those guys. And maybe even Saul Guerrera, because remember that first episode, I was very much expecting to see him again. I was very surprised he was only in that very first episode. But now that they did a lot of the world building, now that that's out of the way, I think I expect to see a lot more of the criminal underworld. Maybe Sid will not be happy with what they're doing, and maybe there will be some bad blood between them and some other crime sticks coming into play. And Crosshair, I think he's going to go off on his own. I don't think the Empire is going to even come for him. I think he's going to have to figure out a way off Camino, because they're going to leave him for dead. So I'll throw it over to Steven.
Yeah, I'm not. I go back and forth on the Rebel Alliance, like early seeds of that type of thing, because like we know that from the books, we have the Ahsoka novel, which takes place 1 to 2 years after Episode 3, and then we have Lords of the Sith, which has Cham Syndulla stuff 5 years after. So I'd honestly prefer that they not touch those characters for the rest of the show, because anytime they flirt with characters they've done stuff with in the books in that time period, I get anxious that they'll make drastic changes to the continuity. But I do think Echo trying to go off and make a bigger difference in some way could be interesting. And a great way to really give more focus in the show, like goals for the batch to have, would be if their main focus is to like figure out what happened to the other clones, like even like the children ones or whatever. Like, I don't know if they're dead or if maybe they're captured or being programmed to fight for the Empire or build stuff or whatever. But if they give the show a singular main goal, like trying to save other clones, or even if they're mainly in one location and trying to help a city against Imperials and the people around there, like I think that would, something like that would give the show more focus and really improve it overall. And yeah, to just give more for each of the main characters to do, and some introspection that really makes you understand all of them better and who they are in this world. Like, they need to feel like all of them need to feel equally breathing and alive in this world, and there need to be like stakes that you can see and stuff that you can see that they can accomplish. So yeah, that's pretty much my 2 cents on how they can improve the show going forward.
Yeah, one thing I like that I'll pick out from that statement is simply, yeah, let's have them in one location. I mean, I mentioned this before, how formulaic, getting on a ship, going around doing a mission, getting back on the ship. Like, have them stranded, have them ruined, or just have them simply volunteering to fight for some people that can't help themselves, and let them be there for like half a season and see how the characters develop there. Throwing over to Ben.
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways like they can improve and just make things overall better. Like, in terms of the direction I'd like it to go, I think I'm kind of predicting, like, I think there's a decent chance that we're going to get, I think the overall potential plot, like the umbrella plot, and then we'll have all the little things in between. But I think the overall potential umbrella like plot for the show is going to be Omega basically falling back into her character of like, let's help people, but it'll be, we need to go save Nala Se, and then saving Nala Se will be kind of like the overall big plot, and then we'll have all the mini stories in between. And I'm thinking that's what it's going to be. And then, you know, we're going to have to see Boba Fett at some point, just because.
Yeah.
I mean, you name drop him how many I mean, how many times in this season they name drop him. And then I think the cool thing, I mean, it depends on how deep they really want to get with it, because of like the demographics and all that sort of stuff. But like, what if, I mean, I guess it could be like a good lesson thing, but what if Omega would somehow like get mad at the Bad Batch, like they bump into Boba Fett, like for some reason or another, and she decides to go with Boba Fett for an episode or two, And then because, what if it's the whole thing like, hey, I'm your real brother, blah, 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 that sort of thing. And then Omega basically like learns the lesson of like, oh, even though he's my real brother, like, I'm going to go back to my other brothers because this guy's like a bad guy. Like, so I feel like we're going to get some type of a character interaction like that between Omega and Boba, because I don't think it'll be just a straight up like Boba capturing her for a bounty or something. Like, I don't think it'll be that. But I do think we're going to get some type of a character interaction between Boba and Omega, and then like the overall story will be related to potentially trying to save Nala Se, and then we'll get those little things in between, and potentially like maybe the Rebel thing, but I'm not sure on the Rebels, honestly, just because Hunter is so unsure about them.
Yeah, so great points there, Ben, especially when it relates to Boba Fett. I think, yeah, you're right. Got it. Boba Fett name drop, sister of Boba Fett. That's going to come into picture eventually. This question's for Steven too. I don't know if they could actually go after Nala Se, because if that stuff that's inside of Mount Tantus is important, those characters can't know that stuff exists. I don't think, if it's related to like cloning and stuff. Like, I don't know
Oh,
if they
that's
can.
true.
If
Yeah.
they find that out, they're gonna have to kill him, because they would just tell somebody, right? So I don't know, and maybe that's when Crosshair can kind of come into play. Maybe Crosshair can be like our point of view. Maybe he does somehow
Mm.
make it to the Empire and he's stationed there, and they're doing experiments on him. Maybe that's where they do the experiments for like the Death Trooper program with like the augmentations and all that on the recruits. Maybe he's like the prototype or person of that, and that's where we see him getting transformed to like the first Death Trooper there on Mount Tantus. So yeah, there's our speculation for season two, and ways that they can improve it. But definitely, I think we all agree that we just need a lot more character development from certain characters like Tech and like Echo especially. So we're gonna get into our final thoughts and our scores out of 10, and we got a transmission in from our buddy Milton. He sent us a quick blurb for Bad Batch season one. He's saying, overall, I thought the season felt like a roller coaster. Started off strong, steady, and consistent. The premiere episode was great and it had me hooked. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, that premiere episode set an unrealistic expectation for the rest of the season. I think that's a pretty good point right there. Whether that's fair or not, I'm not sure, but the show felt bumpy as it progressed, and the Lucasfilm creative team should have known better. There were some good episodes in between, but there were some horrible and awful horror awful ones that really dragged down the main narrative of the season. It's like the season would take 3 steps forward in the right direction, but then take 2.5 back for nonsense points that made no sense for the primary characters in the story. I hope season 2 learns from their past miscues and focuses on telling a strong, consistent narrative. My score for season 1 is a 5 out of 5 out of 10. So thanks for sending your thoughts, man. We know the feelings. We've talked many episodes about how a lot of the episodes frustrated us, and seeing things full picture. I think this is the bar, and hopefully they get past this bar in every season past this one. I'm gonna throw it over to our guest, Steven. Give us your final thoughts, man, and your score out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, it really was a roller coaster, even from the opening sequence. Like, I know this has been talked to death, but like the changes with Caleb Doom, like as nuanced as the show got, I feel like they omitted the nuance of Caleb's relationship with those clone troopers. Like they very well could have just used any other Jedi Padawan. And another thing I forgot to mention was there are other Jedi we know are alive in this period based on teases and Charles Soule's Darth Vader comics, like Quinlan Voss, Oppo Rancisis, and Coleman Cash. So I kind of wonder if any of them might factor into this. I was actually surprised that none of them appeared in Jedi Fallen Order. So I don't know if, like, maybe they could integrate them, but I'm also kind of like, I don't know what to expect when they bring in familiar characters. Like, it depends on the execution, and I'm not sure how well they can do it. But Yeah, this show, it had some momentum, but kind of fizzled out by the end, as we talked about with like this whole season 1 discussion. But I do still think there was some great stuff in this first season, and they can only go up from here, I guess. So hopefully this is the worst season, and it's not like the worst season of any television show ever. like if this very well could end up becoming a really incredible show by the end of the entire series, and maybe we'll look back and be like, you know what, season 1 was a bumpy road, but where the show eventually ended up, like, that was a great ride. Like, I hope that's where we eventually end up. So as it stands, I would say season 1, it was a ride. It had some great stuff, but also some stuff that could have been progressed further. And overall, I think I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
That's fair. That's very fair there, Steven. I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts based on that. And I think we're all kind of, just from talking about this for the last hour, we're all kind of like in the same headspace about like what we're feeling about the show. We find its faults, we find its triumphs at certain moments. And yeah, roller coaster. I'm going to keep repeating that word. Best describes this season. Just ups and downs, ups and downs. I kind of track my trajectory of like my overall excitement level on a week-to-week basis, like with that premiere being like, oh man, this is brand new Star Wars animation. We watched that episode. Me, Milton, and Ben were all glowing on that first episode review, like, oh, this is so great. We had literally no negatives to say. Literally the second episode, another great episode. We had this great canon-defining moment of, oh, they're developing a Mandalorian kind of information dump with the chain codes and all. So it's like, oh, cool. They're actually like going into the greater Star Wars canon lore and giving us like answers in like 35 years, whatever, 40 years prior to that. So we're getting into all that stuff. But then we had ups and downs with the episodes, non-consistent, inconsistencies here and there. And you said this, Stephen, very well about how this is not terrible. It's we've seen seasons of anything far worse than this, but like our expectations as Star Wars fanatics is like, we want this stuff to be great. Like, we've seen the Clone Wars all 7 seasons. We've seen Rebels, some really great Star Wars animation out there. Resistance, great stuff out there. But it didn't hit some of those storytelling highs as consistently as other Star Wars seasons of television. But it still is better than a lot of television in general. But we just expect so much of it at this point. So kind of some of it can kind of be fair, but some of it a little bit unfair criticism. But looking at episode to episode, when our wheels started turning a little bit, we started getting these episodes of like, oh, there goes Omega getting captured again. Oh, she's going to make it out in the same freaking episode. It's just like you started to lose stakes. And I think that's the best way for me to describe it. As we started getting further into season, I started feeling a little less inclined to like be as excited to watch it that week, because I'm like, oh, like I feel like it's going to be another run-of-the-mill episode. Like it started going through my mind and tampering my expectations. Like everybody seems safe. Everybody seems like, oh, they'll get out of this fine. So that's when it started to like lose me on that level. And I'm actually on the same wavelength as you, Steven. I'm also going to give it a 7 out of 10. After all that, I'm still calling it pretty much a good season. It's just, it has a lot of room for improvement. So hopefully next season we can do better. And I will leave it with you, my good friend Ben. What were your overall thoughts and score out of 10, man?
Well, we'll have to end this on the dark side then. So like, I think the show as a whole, like I added it up. I went back through Disney Plus and looked at the season, and like in terms of like a sports season, like a win-loss record, like I feel like this show was a 7-9 team at best. 7 wins, 9 losses. Like I feel like they had more bad episodes than good. Like a lot of the clunky episodes, I feel like you could just cut out. Well, as we said earlier, the infested episode, you could totally drop that out of this season and you wouldn't tell the difference. So like you have so many instances of that. You have mishandlings of, in my opinion, iconic characters like Cad Bane. He basically gets outsmarted by like a 12-year-old. Like, wouldn't he, as this hardcore bounty hunter, like expect, this kid to potentially like have a playful talk with his droid. Like, so like little things like that were just adding up for me, where it was like, what is going on here? Like, we have this iconic, moment with Cad Bane, and then it's just like kind of a flop. And then, we have so many good moments in the season. As you said, Chris, like we started out the first couple episodes, we were like, wow, this is great, blah, 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 blah. And then it just slowly like chipped away. And then we got the Cad Bane stuff, and we were like, oh, okay, cool. I remember all of us basically tweeted like, hey, it's back on track. And then it was like, nope, let's just go right off the rails. Like we went back on track. Maybe the wheel of our train barely got back on track, but then they're like, let's take a hard left. So like they just, like, there were so many filler episodes, so many. And I think a lot of this too was impacting me, maybe even more than you guys, because I was watching it when it was airing at like 3 a.m. So I was like up at 3 o'clock, and literally, like I said, I hate hammering on that infested episode, but it's such a good example because, all of us theorized, we're like, oh, maybe this infested thing, maybe it's going to be like the clone troopers chips or something, blah, blah, blah. And one of my good friends, he's always in the chat on here. He was like, dude, I'm calling it now. It's going to be like Geonosians or some type of bugs or something. And I'm like, no, there's no way. Like, this is the end of the season. There's no chance. And then you guys should have seen me at like 3 o'clock in the morning, like 5 minutes into that episode, and there's bugs. I literally just bursted out laughing. I was like, here we go. Like, so like, I was like, here we go. Like, I literally honestly thought about just shutting the show off, because I was like, okay, this is bad. So like, you have instances like that, but then you have really cool episodes. Like the Camino Destruction episode was really good, I thought. As we said, the premiere, the second episode, all that. Like I'm I think in the minority, but I think the Hera episodes were really bad because I think they were totally misplaced. Like, this isn't a Rebels show. It's, you're not using your main characters. Like, what's the point? So like little things like that added up for me to make me really not be excited for the second season. As I mentioned earlier, like it killed my excitement for the second season. I mean, of course, I'm still going to be watching it probably at 3 o'clock in the morning, because we'll get some trailer to hype us all up and everything. And I'll be like, oh, they're going to redeem it. Maybe we'll get like Republic Commando versus the Bad Batch, like, that type of stuff. And then, who knows where it'll lead. But like, I mean, well, that's another thing. Like, I love seeing like some of the cameos, like Scorch. That was great seeing him in there. Cad Bane was great. Saul Guerrero, I don't think we mentioned him yet today. Like Saul Guerrero, it was great seeing him. Again, with him, I think his animated version is much better than the live action, but that's a thing for another day. Sure. So like you have little things like that adding up to me, and it just made the show just be like, meh, it's just another show. Like, if I go back to rewatch any of this show whatsoever, I'm going to just go back to the highlight episodes and skip the rest, because there's no reason to watch the rest, and in my opinion. And then like on the flip side, a show like Rebels, for example, I think Rebels was done great. Like almost every episode was really, really good. Mm-hmm. Like, it was so coherent. It was done so well. And I think that's another issue. And it's not even like an issue of like the fans. Like, the expectations were Rebels. Like, Rebels is such a good show. You go from that under the Disney umbrella to what we got with the Bad Batch, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, it's not going well. So like, I don't know. It was just really disappointing in that regard, because I thought a lot of things could have been done better. As we mentioned, like the animation was great, the music was pretty good. I thought Omega's character was done really well. Things like that. Like, those type of things were done really, really well. And just a lot of the overall mismanagement of the show, in my opinion, is what really killed it for me. And I think that's just an overall greater reflection and criticism of Star Wars, in my opinion, that we've had over these past few years. Like, we've had so many hirings and firings of directors and all these different things going on behind the scenes at Lucasfilm. Like, it's just, to me, that's just an overall, like, how sloppy this show is just an overall reflection of like how Lucasfilm has been on a lot of their things behind the scenes, in my opinion. But yeah, with all that being said, I would have to say, there were some good moments, but the bad moments outweighed it for me. But I would still have to give it a 5 out of 10, just because I think there's potential there to grow, but they have to really make up a lot of ground with what they have laid in place. Like, because as you mentioned, like basically to start the episode, Steven, like we basically ended up kind of in the same place. So that means you're going to have to do some stuff to really step the story forward in the next season. But yeah, so with all that being said, I'd have to give this show a 5 out of 10.
And
Right.
that is
So we
fair.
got 2 7s, a 5, and what was it, 5.5
Yes.
from Milton?
Yep.
Okay, so overall, our collective average is 6.125 for season 1.
Okay, so we basically got a barely passing score. It got a D from us, so it's hanging on there. It's still passed, but barely. Thanks for checking out the video. Please hit that thumbs up symbol. It helps me know that I'm making content that you guys enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, I also include 2 videos down below you guys should check out. And please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps support me and it notifies you guys of when I get new videos up on the channel. You can also contact me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Starrapter.